who the team's DH in left field for Game 1. Santana hasn't played any games in left field since 2012, and that was only 4 innings. So the question we ask is, should the National League adopt the DH?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, listen, let me tell you something right now, and this doesn't really have as much to do with baseball as it has to do with interest. The fact of the matter is that, let's take, for example, Schwarber tonight. He can't play because he needs to play the field, you know, because obviously you're not DHing in the National League. You can pinch hit, but you're not DHing. So as a result of that, Schwarber, in order for him to get at-bats, he would have to play the field, which he's ill-equipped to do because of that ACL. I mean, they should have considered putting him at third base, putting Bryant out in the outfield as far as I'm concerned, because he doesn't have to move just as much. Max Kellerman, yesterday on my radio show, Sirius XM Mad Dog Sports Radio, every weekday 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Channel 82. I had the great Jim Thome on my show. Smacked 612 home runs in his career. Played for years with the Cleveland Indians. He was sitting in there talking with me. He said he wouldn't play Schwarber. Then I sat up there and said, what about moving him to third base? He said, I would consider that before I put him in the outfield because there's less movement. And so re-aggravating that injury is slimmer. There's a lesser chance of him doing that. That was his position. Here's my position. If you have the DH, excuse me, it ain't just, you know how the saying goes, chicks love the long ball. It ain't just chicks who love the long ball. Everybody loves the long ball. We want to see home runs. We want to see doubles smacked into the alley. We want to see all of that. I want to see this dude up to bat and not just pinch hitting in a key pivotal moment, which he will be allowed to do. I'm talking about him being a DH. Without the DH in the National League, I think that takes something away from the ultra excitement of the game. And God knows baseball could use it at every turn. We get the tradition, we get strategy and schemes, we get all of those different things. But in the interest of making sure you don't bore people to death, make sure that the people who we want to see at the plate are able to be there and not be confined to the dugout because
he'll be there for an at-bat. You know, I mean, that will happen at some point. But you're talking about like 4 at-bats. So
sure, that's a big deal, Max.
One of the issues facing baseball and the reason it's aging, I think primarily it's true. It's the offense, right? Okay. I mean, look, during the PED era, home runs are flying out of the park. All the attendance records were smashed. And baseball the economy was catching up to the economy of football. I mean, really a couple billion off. Like, football at the time was 12 or 14 billion, and baseball was 8 or 10 billion, whatever it was catching up. Okay. And since the offense went away, it's back a little bit, but not to nearly to the levels it was. Interest has waned, yes. But also, in a broader sense, the general trend in this country, you know, where America used to be the national pastime, the general trend is football and basketball get increasingly popular, and baseball gets increasingly marginalized. And I believe that's because baseball is intrinsically less athletic than those other sports. There's less athleticism on display, which is why my favorite highlight shows are always back in the day. This Week in Baseball, I didn't care who hit the home run. They all looked the same. It was Ozzie Smith grabbing the ball at shortstop, making an incredible play. Omar Vizquel later on, because that displays athletic ability. And what the DH does is reward less athleticism. The reason he can't play is because I'm fine with not having a DH. Is injury. Just like Adrian Peterson can't play for injury. You don't get to see him a couple times a game because guess what? That sport requires athletic ability, and the injury has robbed him of it, just like it has Schwarber.
Allow me to interject. You said it's injury, and that's it, and you just have to accept it. Adrian Peterson plays for the most popular sport in America.
Right.
Schwarber is playing for a sport that clearly has dissipated in terms of interest. That's one difference, point number one. Point number two, I don't care who you are. Yes, you might appreciate athleticism or what have you, but everyone loves to see the long ball. If you could smack homers out of the park, what helped resurrect the sport of baseball after the cancellation of the 1994 World Series? You and I both know.
Steroids and human growth hormone.
Well, you could say that, but what I'm saying is it was elevated and illuminated.
McGwire and Sosa.
I'm saying through the home runs.
Right.
Through the home runs. If they weren't smacking home runs, we may not have paid attention to the whole steroids thing. Let's keep that in mind. It was
of course, but that led to the home run.
I'm saying, I get it. I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying the fact that we saw those balls flying out out of the park, re-elevated a level of
Yes,
interest
I
in this sport of
mentioned that.
baseball. So all I'm saying to you is this: if we understand that, then we have to understand when you got a kid that can bring that kind
Still get
of
to see
interest
him.
to the table. I'm just
You don't
one
get
time, Max,
but see,
one time.
But wait, I made those points. Yes, it's offense. I agree with that. He still will have a chance to play offense. And by the way, it'll happen at a very
You're
dramatic
saying
moment.
once.
Arguably a more dramatic moment, because the only time you'll see him is likely to be in a situation maybe with the game on the line, as opposed to so that's one.
Okay.
Two, you say, well, football's more popular, so Adrian Peterson, he's hurt, whatever, it doesn't hurt the sport as much. My argument is one of the main reasons, in a general sense, the trend has been toward football and basketball. They're more exciting, people say. One of the reasons is, a major reason is, they're more athletic. And so baseball, when you have the DH, rewards less athletic ability.
Yeah, but you're not taking.
You're hurt. You can't move. You can't field. You still get there.
And this is where you should be ashamed of yourself for missing this point. You and I both know that what has also contributed to the diminished level of interest in baseball is what is a perceived arrogance. We do things our way. They're always the last to the party. They're always the last to change and implement modifications. We do it our way. America's national pastime, which, by the way, hasn't always been that inclusionary, which helped alienate a segment of the populace, which would also contribute to the diminished level of interest. Because while you're struggling, if you do nothing to really gain or revitalize an interest in the sport because of your arrogance.
The length of the games.
By the way, he can. And you know what slows? You're right. And do you know what slows down the game? The DH, like the DH who takes pitches well, as opposed to the pitcher who you get out right away. 1988. Kirk Gibson couldn't play. He was hurt. He hobbles up to the plate for a pinch hit appearance and hits a home run. One of the most iconic moments in the history of baseball as a pinch hitter. Did not get into the game, and there's no DH.
That's still not an argument against not having a DH.
We've got two great NBA games for you tonight, and the first one is a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals, Cavs versus Raptors at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then it's the Warriors and Pelicans from the Big Easy. Both games available on the apps, ESPN and Watch ESPN app. And we're calling a big Saturday because guess what? 3 Big Ten games for you on tap at noon Eastern. It's Michigan and Michigan State. That's always fun. Then at 3:30, Northwestern battles Ohio State. And at 7, Nebraska, Wisconsin. All 3 games also available on the apps. Meanwhile, for the second time in 3 weeks, the Chargers will take on the defending champion Broncos, but this time Denver will be without C.J. Anderson, who had arthroscopic surgery to repair a torn meniscus in his right knee. There's no timetable for how long Anderson will be out. He will be replaced by rookie running back Devontae Booker, who was selected in the 4th round of this year's draft. Hello, Mark Schlereth. How are we doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
What's
Good
going
to
on,
see
man?
you. And we're going to see you later because you're hosting NFL Live with Teddy Bruschi. We heard rumor on the street.
Yes, tune in and see the train wreck that is
That's
Teddy
gonna
and
be
I
great.
hosting NFL Live together.
And
I'm sure it's
happy
very
Trey
tough
gets
for
a
you
day
guys
off.
to sit there and talk football.
I believe in you, man. I
thank you, man. I
I
appreciate
believe
that.
in you. I expect great things from you and Teddy.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody looking at you saying, "Oh, we happy, stinking, and Teddy, they're gonna do great. They're gonna do great. Oh, good luck, guys." I expect greatness. I know
right.
how knowledgeable
You know
y'all
what?
are. I know you know your football. I love your style, your presentation. I expect greatness.
The man
and I
hasn't
will be
slept in
watching.
4 consecutive days.
I'll be watching.
Now, you know what? Worst thing that happens is I can embarrass myself. I've done that my whole life.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, I do it
that ain't
every
gonna hurt
day
me.
on national
That ain't
TV.
gonna hurt
It's
me.
awesome. All right, Mark, let's get into it. How does the loss of Anderson impact the Broncos in the AFC?
Interestingly enough, I mean, I don't know how long C.J. Anderson is going to be out. I mean, there's no telling right now. Some people are saying a couple of weeks. Some people are saying this is a season-ending injury. So we don't know at this point because of the meniscus repair. But I will say this. They made a move last week. They started Booker. Devontae Booker started for the Denver Broncos Monday night against the Houston Texans, and C.J. came off the bench. Now, C.J. is a bowling ball. As Trey Wingle likes to say, a bowling ball of butcher knives, right? He is a guy that can move the pocket. He's a guy that's got a lot of muscle in his forehead. He'll tattoo you with that stuff. He has been inconsistent over the course of his career. But I'm telling you, Devontae Booker got an opportunity to start. He came in there on Monday night, and that guy played like he had a rocket up his can. I mean, he was going. He was coming off the ball. He set the tone, and what I liked the Denver Broncos, what they did, because their offensive line has struggled at times, their offensive line played pretty well after the first couple of series where they had a couple of penalties. They played pretty well, but the coaching staff developed wrinkles in their running game. It wasn't just straight wide zone left, wide zone right. It was counter. It was power. It was pitch strong. It was toss weak. So they basically implemented other things to take some pressure off that offensive line. And Booker was tremendous outside the tackles, basically starting runs outside, having those cutback lanes. So I really don't think it impacts them that much.
Let me ask you this question. Broncos are 5-2.
Yes.
They lost 2 in a row to Atlanta and San Diego. Prior to that, let me throw their victories out at you.
Okay.
Carolina, ain't the same. Indianapolis Colts, don't get us started. Cincinnati Bengals, nothing to brag about right now. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's when they were 4-0. And now they beat Houston.
Right.
Is it possible that as we look at the Broncos, they may not be what some people think they are because we haven't really seen them extremely tested as of yet? You say what to that?
I would say that defensively, even against Atlanta, even against San Diego, they limited. Now, they gave up some big plays, but they limited points. And they adjusted during the course of those games to actually play pretty good on the defensive side of the ball. There is no question that defensively they are talented. Here's the beauty. Sometimes, and I always say this, when I've won, I've never really learned anything about myself because I'm too busy patting myself on the back and telling me how great I am. It's when you lose, human nature, when you're winning, you don't look at the little things. As Herm says, you don't sweep the corners. Coach Herm Edwards all the time. You got to sweep the corners, right? And when you're winning a lot, sometimes you don't sweep the corners. And losses like that, for me, really made you look at yourself critically. Made you go into a critical mode from looking at what you're doing as a defense, where your weaknesses are, what the blueprint is, and how to adjust to that. And we saw some of those adjustments on Monday night against Houston, albeit not the same type of offensive weaponry of Atlanta or even of San Diego. And what I'm talking about is that inside, being able to match up running backs or tight ends in the middle of the field. San Diego does it well. Atlanta can do that well.
So in other words, I am making Stephen A. Smith a better debater because he has to look at himself after all these losses every day.
The corners?
Yeah.
Right.
He has to do some self-examination. Mark, they played the 2 best offenses in the NFL in consecutive weeks. And as you said, they didn't give up a whole lot of points.
Right.
But C.J. Anderson, to my eyes, and obviously they're not the expert eyes that yours are, particularly with that team, by the way. To me, he seems to be a big part of what they do offensively. And when you have a marginal offense with a essentially rookie quarterback, and you're really reliant on your defense, I find usually you lose a running back's not the end of the world, but in their case, couldn't that be a tipping point in the suddenly very competitive AFC West? With the Raiders on the come up and the Chargers looking better than expected?
So if we're talking out for the season, I think in the short term they'll be fine. I think Booker, there was a reason he started, because he's ready, because he gives them a little bit of wiggle, he gives them a little bit of a better outside attack, if you will. With that said, CJ off the bench was phenomenal last week. Monday night he was great. And when you talk to guys inside the Broncos organization, they'll tell you he's one of the smarter players they have, especially in pass protection. So that's going to be cause for concern long term. If he can't come back, what you really miss from CJ is at the end of the season, he always seems to get better. He always seems to get stronger, and he always seems to be the guy that becomes that battering ram toward the end of the season. So that's where I would be concerned. But in the short term, I'm not that concerned.
Real quick question. With CJ being gone, A, what's that going to do to Trevor Siemian and what he's going to have to do? And B, what should we look at in terms of the AFC West as to whether or not Oakland and Kansas City can usurp Denver?
Right. I think there's a couple of different things. Now, for Trevor Siemian, it puts more on his shoulders. He's still essentially a rookie quarterback, but it puts more on his shoulders there's a lot of opportunities basically in a check with me package. If this, check to this. If that, check to this. That's how they run it in Denver. So it puts more of that onus on him to be able to recognize a bad play into a bad defense and be able to switch those. You saw him do it Monday night. I would expect him to have to actually take more of that weight upon his shoulders. So that's where Trevor Siemian comes on. That's really that's the biggest issue, I think. Puts more of the weight on Trevor Siemian, but it puts weight on everybody. When you lose players, it's always one of those things as an organization, you say we all have to step up.
Are they still the best team in the AFC West?
I think that they are defensively.